We have progressively tightened our border controls and travel restrictions based on the rapidly changing situation. We started with restrictions, as members would recall, for travelers from China. We extended the restrictions to other epidemic centers, initially to Republic of Korea, Italy, Iran, then France, Germany, Spain, later UK, Switzerland, Japan, and the ASEAN countries, and eventually we didn't have to do country by country. We covered the whole world. Earlier this week, we decided to disallow short-term visitors from entering or transiting in Singapore and to limit returning work pass holders to only those providing essential services like healthcare and transport. These are very significant moves for a small open economy like Singapore, where we have always been connected to the world. But these are extraordinary times. This is an unprecedented crisis, and we had to move decisively to keep our borders safe. Importantly, we want to focus our resources on the large number of returning Singaporeans coming back from overseas. We identify those coming back with symptoms as early as possible, right at the airport. We are testing as many as possible, and we are expanding our testing capacity, but the numbers are large. Just from UK and US alone, we are getting about 1,200 Singaporeans coming back every day. We also know that we cannot rely on tests alone, because someone who tests negative at the point of entry may simply be incubating the virus and could develop symptoms over the following days. And that's why it's important to isolate these returnees and have all of them serve a 14-day stay-at-home requirement. They have to stay at their place of residence and avoid contact with others, even within the same household. We now have 38,000 residents on stay-home notices. That's a very large number. And the numbers will rise with the growing number of returnees. Many are understandably concerned about the risk of the stay-home notice returnees infecting their family members. And so we have just tightened the regime with additional precautions. We are focusing on the returnees from the US and UK given the higher risk, and we are now arranging for them to be transported from the airport directly to designated hotels to serve out the 14-day self-isolation period. These returnees have to stay in their rooms throughout. They cannot use any of the hotel facilities, no swimming pool, no gym. 14 days in the room, and we will put in place tight security arrangements to ensure this. And for those who have already returned and are presently still serving their SHN, their stay-home notices at homes, they too can apply to stay in these designated hotels if they so prefer. This is a huge returnees infecting their family members, and so we have just tightened the regime with additional precautions. We are focusing on the returnees from the US and UK given the higher risk, and we are now arranging for them to be transported from the airport directly to designated hotels to serve out the 14-day self-isolation period. These returnees have to stay in their rooms throughout. They cannot use any of the hotel facilities, no swimming pool, no gym. 14 days in the room, and we will put in place tight security arrangements to ensure this. And for those who have already returned and are presently still serving their SHN, their stay-home notices at homes, they too can apply to stay in these designated hotels if they so prefer. This is a huge operational and logistical undertaking given the volumes of people we are receiving every day. We are able to make use of the empty bed spaces in hotels, but we still need to ramp up manpower to enforce the self-isolation. And I want to acknowledge the hard work of all our public officials who did an excellent job in getting this ready within a very short period of time. And there's no telling how long this current wave of returnees and imported cases will last. There are more than 200,000 Singaporeans overseas. with more lockdowns imposed in countries elsewhere, more may want to return here to Singapore, and we should welcome them. But we have to be prepared for more returnees and have arrangements to ensure that they are self-isolated for the full period before they can be brought back within our community. At the same time, we don't want Singaporeans to travel overseas at this time and to compound the problem. And that's why we have raised our travel advisory to the highest level to defer all travel. Previously, it was non-essential, but I think people regard many things as essential. So we say now defer all travel. And those who choose to do so will have to pay full costs should they need treatment for COVID-19 when they return. And likewise, they will be subject to a 14-day self-isolation at a hotel, which they will also have to pay in full. Despite our best efforts, though, at controlling these flows at the borders, we do have to be prepared for more cases to emerge, especially given the large number of returnees. And that's why it's critical to quickly identify and isolate these cases and their close contacts through our ongoing efforts at contact tracing and quarantine. And Minister Gan spoke about this and how we're going to ramp up our capacity to do more contact tracing. This is essential because the minute you give up on contact tracing, then you are no longer able to manage the virus outbreak. And this is the situation that many countries are facing now. They are no longer able to contact trace the cases as well as their close contacts. So we want to continue to maintain contact tracing and put all of the close contacts under quarantine. As of last night, there are around 2,500 persons under quarantine, be it in their homes or in government quarantine facilities. And the numbers gives you a sense of proportions. We're talking about 38,000 stay-home notices because of the large volume of returnees. But within Singapore, the close contacts, we've got 2,500 under quarantine. We will continue with the tough enforcement for both SHN and quarantine cases, including through all the various means we've put in place, remote monitoring, video calls, and random house visits. And we have put in place also very strict penalties for those who breach the requirements. They can be fined up to $10,000 or jailed for up to 6 months or both. But as Minister Gan said just now, the biggest penalty is not just a fine or even a jail sentence, but the cost that you impose to others if you were to breach these rules. We do have an excellent detection system to pick up COVID-19 cases through our contact tracing procedures. One Harvard study called our contact tracing system the gold standard. But even then, our detection rate is not 100%. It will never be. No system can be 100%. And that means that the virus continues to circulate in our population, and there are still cases out there in the community which will pop up. And that is our greater concern. We monitor very closely the number of locally transmitted cases, especially the ones that are unlinked. Unlinked meaning then that they are new, they are popping up, and we don't know where they originate from. And we are seeing more of such cases in recent days. And that's why we need to put in place a whole range of additional public health measures to slow down the spread of the virus within Singapore itself.